Okay, this is a tutorial on the Samurai Photoshop composite. And we're going to go through that composite step by step. You have the PDF file, you have the files for this, so let's get started. I'm going to share my screen. And we're going to get right to this. Okay, so this is a example of the finished piece. The movie poster, the text, the composite layers, and there are quite a few layers in this, so let's get started. You're going to open up the PDF file, which I have open on the left, and we'll start by opening up the background start photo, which is called background start JPEG, and open that up. Now, if I go a little bit too fast on this, you can always rewind the video and look at, review the parts that I sped through. Okay, so here's our first background photo, and you notice we have a watermark down here. Now, another thing too is that I am in the new version of Photoshop 2020. The tutorial was written in an older version of Photoshop, so I'll point out where those differences are. The very first thing I'm going to do with this background photo, though, is I'm going to crop it because I don't like this watermark here. So I'm going to get the crop tool, and I'm going to come up and just crop out that stock photo thing. I'm going to hit return. Also, I'm using a Mac, so I'll be saying command whenever I say command. If you're using a PC, it will be control. If I say option on a PC, it'll be alt. Otherwise, everything should be the same. Okay, so here's the background photo, and then the other photo that we're going to open up is the clouds photo. So I'll go to this photo here, open that up. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to make a selection of this sky. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to go to our quick selection tool, which is over here. We're going to go down to quick selection tool. I'm going to click and drag across. And I'm going to select this area here. Then I'm going to go to my clouds photo. I'm going to select this photo. Command A selects everything. Command C copies. I'm going to go over to my background photo, and then according to the instructions here, we're going to paste that image into the background. Okay, now okay, so we have that copied. We're going to go up to edit, paste special, paste into, and we do that. We get the image of the clouds pasted into the into the background photo. Now you can tell along the edge here of this temple here that it's very crisp. It looks kind of fake. So what we're going to do with this is, I believe he talks about doing a refine edge on this before we paste into. So let me undo that, and let's go to this refine edge. You're going to refine the refine edge up here and select and mask. Instead of refine edge in the new version of Photoshop, it says select and mask. So we'll go over here and we'll up the radius to, let's see, what is he saying in this? 40 pixels. Okay, so I'm going to up the radius to about 40 pixels, and that's going to soften up that edge so that when we put the cloud photo in, it's not going to look so sharp. We're going to output to a selection down here. I'm going to click OK, and then I'm going to go grab that cloud photo again, select everything, Command A, Command C, copy it, and then I'm going to paste that into this background. So I'll go to edit, paste special, paste into, and there we go. Okay, and we can see this edge here is a little softer, looks a little bit better. Okay, so the next thing to do is he says that we've got to grunge this up a little bit, so we're going to take it into Photoshop's HDR toning. And in order to do that, we're going to go to image adjustments, HDR toning. So we'll go up to image, we're going to go up to image adjustments, and we're going to go down to HDR toning. It's going to ask us if we want this document to be flattened. We're going to say yes. And then we're going to plug in these dimensions here that he has in this example. Let me zoom into this a little bit. And we've got a radius of 240. So I'll type that in, 240. Tab over a strength of 2.15, 2.15. A gamma of 0.50. A lot of numbers here. Exposure of minus 310, 310, minus 310. Detail of 120. Shadow of minus 10. We've got plus 30 on the highlight. We've got 0 vibrance and plus 20 on the saturation. Then on this curve, we're going to click once on the curve, set a point here. We're going to set our input to 89 and our output to 70. So 89 there and 70 there. Okay, and then we have that curve that looks like that. Back out of this a little bit. And we will click OK. So we'll click OK. That applies that grunge effect to the clouds and the background temple. Now he's talking here in step 6 that he actually used a plugin called Topaz Adjust. We don't have that plugin, so we're going to skip through this. And now we're going to go to selecting the samurai. So we're going to open up the samurai photo. Now, in these next steps, selecting the samurai, step 1 through step, step 6, he talks about how to extract the samurai from the background. Well, his example in real life is, didn't really work for us. So I've done that extraction, and I'm going to give you this whole piece here already extracted with the mask. So figure on this already being done, and that will be, if you open up the file, which is called Samurai Selected PSD, you can see that that work has already been done. So we're going to do that. We're going to open up that file, and here it is. You can see the mask is already done, and that's what basically this part of the tutorial covered, is how to create this selection and how to knock out the background. If you want to learn more about how to select objects in Photoshop, there are plenty of tutorials on that. So this is fairly simple to understand. Okay, so now we're going to create the composite. We're going to put him into the background photo here. So we're going to take this samurai Photoshop file. We're going to grab it and pull it out of its tab. And then we're just going to, with the move tool, we're just going to click on this samurai, click and drag him over and place him inside our background composite. Now, he's too big, so I'm going to transform him. I'm going to do Command T, and we're going to see the transformation box here. I'm going to do Command, or on a PC, Control 0, and that's going to back out enough for us to see the entire selected box. And with grabbing a corner node, I'm going to just kind of reduce him down to size and place him here into the composite, and that looks pretty good. I'm going to hit my return or enter key on the PC and then go back up to Command or Control 0, and that's what we have so far. Okay, so that's the composite of the samurai. Okay, now once we have that size right, he's a little bit too bright. You can see that the lighting is very bright. So in this next step here, we are going to take him into Camera Raw, and we're going to tone down his brightness. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to click on this little smart layer in the thumbnail here in the lower right corner of the thumbnail. You see the smart layer icon. We're going to double click on that. That takes us into the Camera Raw interface. And in this interface, we are going to follow the instructions of what he has here. And we're going to use his settings here. He's going to set the exposure to -2 and the recovery to 25. So we'll do that here. We'll go up to the exposure. We'll make it -2, and that darkens it up. You can see it getting darker. Okay, so -2. Recovery's at 25. And then we're going to take the adjustment brush and we're going to kind of tone down his torso a little bit. And the adjustment brush is located here. So I'm going to grab this adjustment brush, and I believe he is talking about -0.50 on the brightness, or on the exposure, and -10 on the brightness. So we're going to go up to the exposure, and we're going to make that down to -50. And then on the brightness, we're going to take that down to -10, which is about there. And then we're going to take this brush, which is a circle, and to make the brush bigger, you use your scroll wheel up and down. And we're going to kind of paint over this center torso area. So let's paint, and you can see how it's darkening it. Okay, so we'll darken this up. We'll darken all of them down here. Okay, we'll paint over here. We don't want to paint his face, so we'll paint that. Okay. And then when we're done, we're going to hit OK. So we'll hit OK, and that will apply that darkness, as you can see. It applied that darkness to our composite. I'm going to get rid of this photo here because we don't need this anymore. Pull this out a bit. Okay, so here we are, and now we'll go down to the next step. He says that things are looking good, but sometimes you want to find a common color, and you want to make it where any kind of reflective color is reflected onto the subject, so it looks like it blends in with the background. So in step 5, he's going to ask us to use the Command Option Shift, or Control Alt Shift, the PC version, and we're going to combine these into one layer. So we'll do that. I'll do Command Option Shift or Control Alt Shift and E, and there we have that reflected here in this top layer. Then we're going to blur and find the average color of this entire photo. And the way we do that is with this layer selected, we're going to go up to Filters, Blur, and Average. So Filter, Blur, and Average. And what that's going to do is get the average amount of color, find the average color in that, and blur it to the point where all we're seeing is that color. Okay, so now what we're going to do in the next step is we're going to create a clipping mask on this and mask this layer so that only the layer below it shows. So we're going to go up to Layer, Create Clipping Mask. So Layer, and then there is Create Clipping Mask right there. Okay, so we'll click on that, and then we see that that color has been basically kind of blended into this whole composite here. And then in order to show him, we're going to go to a layer blend mode of color and reduce the opacity to 20%. So with this layer selected, up here in the blend mode, we're going to go down to color. And then we're going to change the opacity to 20%. So we're going to back that opacity off. And when we do that, we're going to see this composite again, only this time it has some of this background color reflected in it, the average color. Okay, so that's a little thing that he does that, you know, kind of is a little tweak to this. Okay, the next thing is we're going to bring in the fighting samurais in this photo. So we're going to go up again to File and Open. We're going to open up the file Guys Fighting. And we're going to click Open. There's our guys fighting. We're going to pull this photo out, and then we're going with the Move tool. We're going to click and drag this into our composite. We're going to put this photo and put it way down at the bottom here. Okay, and it's actually sized to the exact width of this. What we could do is we could crop out this watermark here, but it's really not going to show. Then he says to go up to Layer Release Clipping Mask. But if we do that and we go up to Layer, all we see is Create Clipping Mask. We don't see Release Clipping Mask because there is no clipping mask to release. So this is something in the tutorial that doesn't really follow what we're seeing with, you know, our version of Photoshop. So this has been a little confusing to students. So disregard this release clipping mask command. Let's go to the next step, step number 9. And what we're going to do is, this is a full color photo, and we have to make it a kind of like a duotone or a monochrome photo. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to create an adjustment layer here for this particular photo. So it says to create a new adjustment layer at the bottom of the layers palette and choose hue saturation. So I'm going to move me up here a little bit because we don't need to see that. And down here with this layer selected, down here I'm going to go to the adjustment layer, click on that, and I'm going to slide down and click hue saturation. Here we're going to click colorize, and then there's some values of hue saturation and lightness that we're going to put in, and it's 34, 36, and negative 75. So let me double click here and go 34, 36, and a negative minus 75. Okay. And what that does is that creates this hue saturation layer, but it created it on top of everything. So we don't want to do that. So now the next step is we're going to go down, and it says the hue saturation adjustment applied to everything. So we're going to go to Layer, Create a Clipping Mask, and force the layer below it to have this hue saturation effect, and not the layer up here, not the composite. So the way we create a clipping mask is with this hue saturation layer selected, we'll just simply go up to Layer, Create Clipping Mask. And what it did was it applied that hue saturation layer just to that bottom photo and not to the top. So we're back to this again. And now what we want to do is kind of blend this photo to this photo here because there's too sharp of a line right here. So what we have to do is we're going to do that with the gradient tool. So we're going to grab our gradient tool. We're also going to go up here and click the second button right here, second from the right, okay, which is the reflected gradient. Then we're going to go down here and, or I'm sorry, to this, and we're going to select the middle transparent, foreground to background transparent. And then we're going to make black our foreground color right here. So if white is your foreground color, make black your foreground color. Make sure that this is this right here, the foreground to background, foreground to transparent option. And you'll see that it's dark on the left side and transparent on the right side. We're using the gradient tool now. And now we're simply going to position our cursor right on the edge of this line. We're going to click down about a third into the photo, and we're going to release. And oh, I know it's the reason why is that I'm on the hue saturation layer. So I'm going to undo that, Command Z, and get on this layer. Okay, this is the layer we want to do it to. And then we are going to drag about a third of the way down into the photo, and you'll see that it blends this photo now from black into this photo below it, into transparency. Okay. So that's kind of what we have going here. In fact, if we want to do that again, Command Z, we can kind of click and drag, okay, and make a little softer effect. But anyway, we want this sword to show here. So you want to see the steel of this sword right here. Okay, this looks pretty good. So let's go on to the next step now. And yeah, that's what it's asking us to do. It's asking us to blend these two together, which we did. And so now we're going to put in the woman, the little geisha here. And if you look in the final version of this, let me switch to this. Her face is up in the upper right corner, and it's kind of ghosted out. It's just the face right here, and then we're going to have to erase the rest of this photo. So let's go back to our composite here, and let's open up that photo. So I'm going to go to File and Open. I'm going to open up the photo that says, let's see, it is the woman JPEG. So we'll open that up, and this is our photo. We're going to pull this out of the tab. And then again, with the Move tool, I'm going to click and drag her into this composite. Okay. Now I dragged her in, but she is above the hue saturation layer here. And so basically, she has to be at the top of the stack. So I'm going to take this hue saturation layer and move it underneath her. So now she's at the top of the stack. Okay. And pull this up here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to release the clipping mask of this photo. So with this photo selected, the woman, we're going to go up to Image and, or I'm sorry, Layer, and we're going to release the clipping mask on that. And then this photo becomes in front of everything. Okay, now in order to see where to position her, what we're going to have to do, and I think that's in the next step here, is we're going to have to reduce her opacity to 20%. And so with this layer selected, we'll go to opacity and we'll reduce this 20%. So it's very faint. So you see her very faint here. I'm going to click and move her up into this corner here. So we see her face and her hand here. Okay, it's very faint. The problem is that we see most of the other parts of her photo right here. So we're going to have to add a mask, and then we're going to have to paint out the rest of this photo. So that's what the next step is right here. It says click the Add Layer Mask icon at the bottom of the Layers panel and add a layer mask. And then with your foreground color set to black, select the brush tool, and a fairly large soft edge brush. And we're going to hide most of the mask except for her face and hands. Okay, so we'll do that. We have this layer selected. We're going to grab a mask and click a mask right here. We're going to get on our brush tool, which is over here, the brush tool. We want a fairly big brush, but not this big. So I'll reduce this down by hitting the left bracket key. Okay. We need to have black as our foreground color. So here's our foreground color, which is black. We're going to be painting on this mask. And we want the opacity of our paint to be 100%. So I'm going to move this up to 100%. 100% opacity, 100% flow. And then we're just going to start painting everything but her face and hand, everything but this corner section here. So I'll start to paint, and I'm starting to literally erase every other part of that photo. Okay. And you can see in the mask here, you can see how the black area is what I'm erasing. Okay, the black area is, so the white area is still part of that photo. So as I click and start erasing, you can see how that's filling in right there. So it looks like I need to kind of erase a little bit more up here. Okay, just do a nice thorough job. Just go up and down, or side to side, and make sure that you're erasing everything but her face. Okay, now that looks pretty good. That's a pretty solid mask right there. Maybe a little bit more up here. Okay, everything's black except for this corner spot right here, which is white, and that's what we want to see. Okay, let's go to the next step. And it says it's time to add a light source on his face. Okay. We want light to, it looks like light is shining in this way, and so we want to put a light source in his face. What we're going to do, it says, is to click on the create a new layer icon and create a new blank layer at the top of the layers panel. So with layer 3 selected, I'm going to go over here and click a new layer, which is layer 4. I'm going to use the brush tool. I'm going to make the brush tool bigger this time, and you can see here in the example about how big his brush is. So if I click in Photoshop, it looks like his brush is about from the top of the photo to the side of the photo. Okay, maybe something like that. It encompasses his face. And with white as the foreground color, white is going to be the foreground color. And the opacity of this is going to be very low, 20% opacity. So I'm going to back this down to 20%. And all I'm going to do is just click once. And when I do, you can see that white kind of, come in. If I clicked again, you can see what that does. Okay, it's making it kind of cloudy. Looks like some white light is coming in this way. I'm going to Command Z that last one. Just one click of white is fine. And so now I have this light source. So that's what this section is. The next thing is I want to put a lens flare on his sword. Okay, so his sword sparkles. So he says, I think we could add some flare to the sword in front of him. So create another blank layer. Go to the Edit Fill and choose Black from the Use pop-up menu and fill it with black. Okay, so I'm going to add another layer. So this will be layer 5. So I'll go down here to the Layers palette, add layer 5. I'm going to go up to Edit and Fill, and I'm going to fill it with black. Okay, black. Click OK, and it completely fills this layer with black, so we see nothing underneath. Then we're going to go to Filter, Render, Lens Flare. We're going to select 105 millimeter, the 105 millimeter prime option. We're going to set the brightness to 80 and click OK to apply the lens flare. So we go up to Filter. We're going to go down to Render and Lens Flare. We're going to click on the 105 prime option here, and we're going to make the brightness 80, okay, which is 80% here, and we're going to click OK. So we have this lens flare. Now, we're going to change the blend mode of this layer to screen to hide the black, and use the Move tool to position the lens flare right onto the sword. So with this layer selected, we're going to go to Screen Blend Mode. So here's our blend mode up here right above where it says Normal. And we're going to go down to Screen. And notice when I go to screen, all of the black goes away, because what screen does is just show the light pixels rather than the dark pixels. It prioritizes all the light pixels on the layer. So I see the lens flare. I have the move tool. I'm going to click on the lens flare and move it down to the sword right there. Now it's a little too bright, so I'm going to lower the opacity. Now in this section here, he talks about using a mask to lower the opacity or to lower the intensity of this. Let's do that. We'll use his method here. So it says that add a layer mask onto the lens flare layer, this layer 5, and then press X so that the foreground color is white, and we're going to option click a mask. So I'm holding the option key down, or the alt key if you have a PC, and I'm going to go to the layer mask and I'm going to click, and we get a black mask here. Now the black mask covered everything up. It covers everything next to it here. And then I'm going to get a brush, B, and then I'm going to make my foreground color, make sure that my foreground color, he says, is white. So we'll have white here. I'm going to make my brush smaller. And then I'm going to start painting around that flare. Okay, so I'm going to paint around the flare. I'm going to make my opacity 100%. So as I paint around the flare, you can see there's the flare. Okay, and I've also masked out those other little dots right there. So there's the flare. You can see the little white hole that shows what's underneath it, which is the flare. Now, if that's a little bit too bright, you can lower the opacity of this. And I'll lower the opacity a little bit, and that tones down that flare. Okay, so there's the flare. We've masked out all of this other stuff, and that's done. Okay, the last thing is bringing in the text. And so we're going to bring in the text by opening up the text file. Now you can use the type tool and actually type in the text, but in this case, in this tutorial, he has already typed in all of the text here, so all you have to do is open up that file and bring it in. It's a Photoshop file, so again, we'll go to File and we'll go to Open. We'll grab that file, which is called the movie title and credit block. Click on that, open it up, and here is the text. And notice that it's text, it's white text against a black background. Well, all we want to do is bring in the white text. We don't need to bring in the black background. So I'm going to grab this tab, pull it out. Let me pull it over here. And I'm just going to grab this text layer and drag it into our composite. So click and drag. And there it is. Okay, and the text layer comes in above the last layer that was selected. I'm going to move this text layer down. Oops, clicked on the wrong thing here. Click on the text, move that text layer down. So that text is just above the bottom here. And if you notice, if you move this text from left to right, you see when that magenta center line comes in, that means your text is completely centered in this. But if you notice, we're missing the top text. In fact, if I move this text down some more, you can see that there's some actual words up here that says, because nobody remembers the last. So, but if I move it down where that, it's all one file. So what I need to do is I need to reduce the size of this text. So I'm going to do Command 0, and I'm actually going to reduce this a little bit more so we can see everything. And with this text layer selected, I'm going to do Command T, or transform this. And you can see how big the text box is. You can see that the text is rolling off the bottom of the poster here. So I'm going to grab this corner node, and I'm going to reduce this text until I see July or maybe August, so that fits. And then this fits at the top. Okay, so see how this text box is smaller than the poster now? And that's what I want. So I'm going to move this text box into position. Oops. Let me click on the text and center it. Okay, get this nice and centered. There you go. And I think I might have to reduce this just a little bit more. So I'll do Command T again and reduce this down just a little bit so that we can see that. Hit my Enter key or Return key on a Mac and center this again. There it is. Okay, that's looking pretty good. So there it is. There's the text. Now we're almost done, but the only problem is that we can't read this word nobody across this white sword because this is... So we're going to need to do a little trick here. Let me get rid of this. We don't need this anymore. And what we're going to do is we're going to put another layer in between the text layer, underneath the text layer. And the way to do that is if I select layer 5 and I add a new layer, it will create a layer above the selected layer. And that makes it in between the text layer. Okay, so the text layer is above this layer. We're going to select this layer, layer 6. And then we're going to get our gradient tool again. And we're going to use that same little trick. Okay, this time we're going to use black as our foreground color. So it's going to go black to transparent. So now let me zoom in here a little bit so you can see the effect. I'm going to take my gradient cursor up here at the top and I'm going to kind of click and drag down below here, and it's going to put a black gradient. You see that black gradient? And I want it a little bit deeper, so I'll do Command Z and redo that. And let me do this again. Bring it down a little bit deeper. There, that's perfect. So I've darkened the top to the bottom, and then it blends into transparency. And now I'm able to read the N-O across the white sword. Okay, so that's just a little layer trick that you do to make white text read against the white background. Okay, Command 0 gives me fit in window, and there it is. That's the end of the tutorial. This is the final composite. There is another step that he does in between here, and I think it's up above here somewhere where he's actually kind of going in and, let's see, I can't remember where he did that, but in any event, that's really about all you need to do with this. This is the composite. It's a composite of 1, 2, 3, 4 images that are blended together, that are, the opacity is used to kind of fade some photos back. We have text that goes over the whole thing. We have a lens flare here. We have some lighting effects. Those things are part of the tutorial. Okay, so that is the Samurai tutorial. If you have any questions, just inbox me on Canvas, and we can go over any questions that you might have of this. But watch the video, take it step by step. If you have a newer version of Photoshop, the tutorial is going to look a little bit different because the interface is a little bit different. But basically, the nice thing about Photoshop and all the Adobe products is that they pretty much, even though they upgrade them every year, they pretty much keep the same features. You know, they don't take out features, and they will put features in different spots in the menu sometimes, and that drives us all crazy. But for the most part, in this tutorial, everything should be there. So anyway, that's all I have. So enjoy, give it a shot, and happy Photoshop.